thought about how a company in, say, the UK can safely buy goods worth millions of dollars from a supplier they've never even met, thousands of miles away? Well, the answer often boils down to one very powerful document. And today, we're going to break down exactly what that document is, the letter of credit. So put yourself in this situation. You're running a business and you need to import something from a supplier on the other side of the world. The thing is, they want you to pay them before they ship anything. But you're thinking, no way am I sending a huge amount of money until I know for sure those goods are on a boat and headed my way. It's a classic stalemate, a real trust issue, and it's the very problem we're here to solve today. Here's our roadmap. First, we'll dig into that core trust problem. Then, we'll introduce the solution, the bank's promise, which is the letter of credit. After that, we'll explore how this one document can also be a powerful financing tool, letting you get paid early, helping you fund your own suppliers, and even giving you access to cash before you've shipped a single item. At the heart of global trade, there's this fundamental conflict. You've got the seller on one side and the buyer on the other. And when it comes to money, they want opposite things. The seller wants to be paid before they let go of their goods, but the buyer, well, they want to have the goods in hand before they pay up. This just creates a standstill, right? Who's going to take that first risky step? Who's going to trust the other person? This is exactly where the letter of credit steps in. It brings a trusted third party into the middle of the deal to break that deadlock and get things moving. So who is this trusted middleman? Well, in almost every case, it's a bank. And the special tool they use is called a letter of credit, or you'll often hear it called an LC for short. You can think of it as a financial safety net that's built on a very simple but very powerful promise. So what is it exactly? A letter of credit is basically a formal written promise from the buyer's bank. The bank is guaranteeing that it will pay the seller a specific amount of money, but, and this is the key part, only if the seller provides a very specific set of documents that prove they've held up their end of the bargain and shipped the goods. All of a sudden, the seller doesn't have to worry about whether the buyer will pay. They just have to trust the bank. Let's walk through a quick example. Let's say a buyer in the UK wants to buy a container of clothing from a seller in Vietnam. First, the UK buyer goes to their bank, which we call the issuing bank, and asks for a letter of credit. That bank then issues the LC and sends it to the seller's bank. Now, the seller in Vietnam sees this guarantee and feels confident, so they ship the clothing. To get their money, they just have to take all the required shipping documents, proof that the goods are on the way, to their own bank. As long as those documents are exactly right, the bank pays the seller. Just like that, the trust problem is gone. Now, there are two key principles that make this bank promise so strong. First, LCs are irrevocable. That means once it's issued, the buyer can't just wake up one day and decide to cancel it. Everybody has to agree. Second, and this is absolutely crucial, the LC is independent from the sales contract. The bank's job is not to inspect the goods. Their only job is to inspect the documents. If the paperwork is perfect, the bank must pay, period, even if the buyer later has an issue with the quality of the goods. This strict focus on documents is what makes the whole system work. Okay, so the LC is a great guarantee of payment. But what if a seller needs their cash faster than the agreed-upon payment date? This is where the letter of credit starts to become more than just a guarantee. It actually becomes a really flexible financing tool. And the first way it does that is through a process called negotiation. Let's say the payment terms on the LC are 90 days after shipment. That's a long time for the seller to wait for their money. But if the LC allows for it, the seller can go to their bank and ask them to negotiate the documents. What this means is the bank will essentially buy the right to that future payment. They'll pay the seller the money right away, minus some interest and fees, and then they'll be the ones to collect the full amount from the buyer's bank in 90 days. It's a great way for the seller to get immediate cash flow. Now, there's a really important detail here. This negotiation can be done with recourse or without recourse. With recourse is the standard way. It means if for some reason the buyer's bank doesn't pay up in the end, your bank can come back to you and demand that money back. The risk is ultimately still on you. The much better option for the seller is without recourse. This usually requires something called a confirmed LC, where the seller's own bank adds its own guarantee to the deal. With that extra layer of security, once your bank pays you, the deal is done. It's final. The bank takes on all the risk. All right, let's switch gears and look at how LCs can help a different kind of business, the intermediary or trader. This is a company that's in the middle. They buy from a factory and then sell those goods to a final buyer. Their big challenge is how to pay their supplier before they've been paid themselves. The letter of credit has two really clever solutions for this. The first and simplest way is with a transferable credit. If the original letter of credit that the intermediary receives is specifically marked as transferable, they can just ask their bank to formally transfer a piece of it over to their own supplier. It's a clean way to pass the security of that original LC down the supply chain, so the factory can feel safe shipping the goods. But what happens if the original LC is not transferable? Well, there's another option, and it's called a back-to-back credit. In this case, the intermediary takes the first LC they received, we can call it the master LC, and uses it as collateral. Their bank then uses that collateral to issue a brand new, totally separate letter of credit for the supplier. It works, but as you can imagine, it's a bit more complicated and involves more risk for the bank. So the difference is pretty straightforward. A transferable credit is just one LC that gets partially passed along to someone else. A back-to-back credit deal involves two separate LCs, the master one and the new one. This means more paperwork, more complexity, and more risk for the bank, which is why a transferable credit is almost always the preferred choice if you can get one. So far, we've seen how you can get paid right after you ship and how you can pay your own suppliers. But what if you need money even earlier? What if you need funds to actually buy the raw materials and manufacture the products in the first place? Well, this is called pre-shipment finance, and yes, LCs have a solution for that too. There are two main types here, and it all comes down to security. First, you have a red clause credit. It got its name because historically, the risky clause was written in red ink to make sure bankers paid attention. This allows the seller to get an unsecured cash advance before they even ship. Because it's unsecured, it's very high risk for the bank, and is really only used for very established, trusted sellers. The other type is a green clause credit. This one allows for a secured advance. Here, the seller has to put the goods or raw materials into a warehouse that's controlled by the bank. This gives the bank collateral against the loan, which makes it much lower risk. So let's just quickly review. You can now see that the letter of credit is really a whole toolkit for financing trade. With negotiation, you can get your cash as soon as the goods are on their way. With transferable and back-to-back credits, you can fund your entire supply chain. And with red or green clause credits, you can get the money you need right at the very beginning of the process, before production even starts. So, as you can see, a letter of credit is so much more than just a simple guarantee of payment. It's a really dynamic and flexible key that unlocks the working capital and manages the risk that really makes global trade possible. So, with that in mind, I have a question for you. What is one financing challenge in your business, or a business you know of, that one of these LC tools could potentially help solve? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We genuinely love to read them. If this breakdown was helpful for you, please give this video a like and be sure to subscribe for more insights into the world of trade finance. Thank you so much for watching.